If you're watching this right now, it's probably 3 in the morning. Maybe a bit later. Maybe earlier. But you woke up. Again. And this time, it wasn't the noise that brought you back. It wasn't a nightmare. It was something deeper. Something that doesn't have a name, but that you feel in your chest like a weight that doesn't hurt, but also won't let you sleep. You already tried to go back. You turned on your side, closed your eyes, counted breaths, but your mind won't stop. And the more you try to silence it, the louder it screams. Thoughts about yesterday, about tomorrow, about what you said, about what you didn't say, about who you are, about who you're not anymore. And in the middle of all this, there's something strange, a feeling that you're not just awake, you're present, more present than you've been all day, as if the darkness revealed something that daylight hides, as if the silence of the early morning opened a door you didn't even know existed. This video won't make you sleep. That's not what it's for. This video is for those who wake up at 3 in the morning and feel that something bigger is happening, something that the rational mind can't explain, but that the soul recognizes immediately. So take a deep breath. You're not alone. And maybe, just maybe, you didn't wake up by accident. Let's talk about silence, and about what it's trying to tell you. There's something about the early morning that most people will never understand, because most people are sleeping, and that's not a judgment. It's just a fact. But you're not sleeping, and maybe that means something. Medicine will tell you it's insomnia. Psychology will tell you it's anxiety, and maybe it is. But maybe it's also something that doesn't fit into diagnoses, something that ancient cultures knew well, but that we, in the constant noise of modern life, have completely forgotten. 3 in the morning has always been known as the wolf hour, the hour when the veils are thinnest, the hour when the dream world and the waking world meet in a dark corridor, and you, without meaning to, stand right in the middle. It's no coincidence that mystics, monks, and seekers always chose this time to meditate, not because they wanted to wake up early, but because they knew that consciousness at this moment is different, more open, more vulnerable, more honest. And that's why, when you wake up at 3 in the morning, the thoughts that come aren't the same as when you're distracted during the day. They're deeper, more real, more frightening, perhaps, because they're the thoughts you spent all day trying to avoid. They're the questions you swallowed with coffee. They're the fears you suffocated with productivity. And now, in the darkness, with no distractions, no social media, no loud music, no one calling you. They're here, right in front of you, looking directly at you. But here's what I want you to understand. This is not a curse. This is an invitation. The early morning isn't waking you up to torture you. It's waking you up because there's something in you that needs to be heard. Something that the noise of the day drowns out. Something that the constant performance of being okay doesn't let emerge. And the only time this something can reach you is when everything around you finally gets quiet. If this resonates with you, if you've felt this before, leave a comment just saying 3 a.m. You don't need to explain, just so we know we're not alone in this. Because, you see, the early morning has a way of making us feel completely isolated, like we're the only ones awake on the entire planet. But we're not. There are thousands of us, scattered around the world, awake at exactly this moment, feeling exactly this. So, let's talk about silence. Not the silence you create when you turn off your phone, but the silence that was already here before you were born. The silence that's beneath all sounds. The silence that's not absence, but presence. Pure presence. Presence that listens, and that perhaps has always been listening to you. When you were a child, you were afraid of the dark, not because the dark was dangerous, but because in the dark you couldn't see. And when you couldn't see, your mind started to create monsters, shadows, things that didn't exist, but that seemed real enough to make you pull the blanket up to your nose. But as you grew up, you learned that the dark doesn't hide monsters. The dark just reveals what was always there, but that daylight allowed you to ignore. And the same thing happens with silence. We spend our whole lives fearing silence, filling every second with music, with conversations, with notifications, with thoughts. Because when silence comes, something uncomfortable happens. We come face to face with ourselves, and most of us aren't ready for that meeting. But silence isn't empty. That's the big illusion. Silence isn't the absence of sound. Silence is the original sound. It's the subtle hum of the universe before any word was spoken. It's the space within which everything happens. And when you finally stop resisting it, when you finally let it in, you realize something extraordinary. Silence was listening to you all along. Every time you cried alone. Every time you screamed without sound. Every time you whispered a prayer that no one else heard. Silence was there, not as a cold, indifferent wall, but as a presence, a witness, an infinitely compassionate field of consciousness that never judged you, that never abandoned you, that never needed words to understand you completely. And that's why, when you wake up at 3 a.m, you don't just feel awake, you feel seen, as if something bigger than you gently touched your shoulder and whispered, "Hey, it's time. It's time to stop running." Because that's what we do, isn't it? We run. We run from ourselves. We run from emptiness. We run from loneliness. We run from questions that don't have easy answers. And life allows it. Life gives you work, relationships, goals, distractions. Life gives you 1,000 ways to avoid the meeting with silence. But the early morning doesn't let you run. The early morning sits you down, immobilizes you, and whispers, "Now. Now is the time to listen." And what you hear isn't words. It's not motivational phrases. It's not advice. What you hear is the breath of the universe, the subtle pulse of existence, the silent rhythm of everything that is. And in that rhythm, you realize something that scares and frees you at the same time. You realize you were never really alone, not in the sense that there's someone physically by your side, but in the sense that there's something immense, something infinite, something that has no name, but that you recognize immediately, something that has always been with you, that has always been in you, that has always been you. And silence? Silence is just the way this communicates, not through words, but through presence, through being, through a type of listening that dissolves the distance between the listener and the listened to. So, next time you wake up at 3 a.m. and the silence seems deafening, don't fight it. Don't try to fill it. Don't grab your phone. Don't turn on the TV. Just sit, breathe, and let silence do what it has always done. Let it hear you. Let it see you. Let it embrace you in a way that no human body ever could. Because silence isn't the absence of company. Silence is the presence of everything. And you, awake at 3 in the morning, are not alone in the darkness. You're being held by it. But what about the mind? The mind that won't stop. The mind that, the moment you lie down, decides to do a complete retrospective of your life, revisit every mistake, every embarrassment, every word said wrong. Yes, that mind. Let's talk about it. Because the truth is that your mind isn't trying to sabotage you. Your mind is trying to protect you. It always has been. Since you were little, your mind learned that it needs to be alert. It needs to anticipate. It needs to plan. It needs to make sure you're not caught by surprise. And during the day, while 1,000 things are happening, the mind can fulfill this role without you noticing. But at night, there's nothing left to do. No more emails to answer. No more conversations to have. No more tasks to complete. And the mind, which spent the whole day in survival mode, suddenly finds itself without function. And what does it do? It creates one. It starts to review, to analyze, to worry. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because it's the only job it knows. The mind was trained to solve problems, and when there are no real problems, it invents them. And that's why, at 3 in the morning, you find yourself thinking about things that don't even matter anymore. That conversation from 3 years ago. That mistake that no one but you remembers. That fear about the future that may never come true. The mind isn't trying to torture you. It's trying to keep you safe. But the problem is that it doesn't know how to differentiate between real danger and imagined danger. For the mind, everything is a potential threat. And then you lie there, in the dark, while the mind fires thought after thought, as if trying to put out a fire that doesn't exist. And the more you try to control it, the stronger it gets. The more you try to sleep, the more awake you become. Because the mind feels your resistance as confirmation that something is wrong, and doubles its effort. But here's the secret no one told you. You don't need to control your mind. You never needed to. What you need is just to observe. Not fight, not judge, not try to stop. Just observe. As if you were sitting on the bank of a river, watching thoughts pass like leaves in the current. They come. They go. You don't need to grab each one. You don't need to dive after them. You just observe. And, eventually, something extraordinary happens. The mind realizes you're not playing its game anymore. You're not reacting anymore. You're not panicking anymore. And when it realizes this, when it feels that you're okay, even with the chaos inside your head, it starts to calm down. Not because you forced it, but because there was no longer a reason to scream. You know what's funny? The mind is so busy trying to protect you from silence that it doesn't realize that silence is exactly what you need. Because silence isn't a threatening emptiness. Silence is the space within which the mind can finally rest. The mind doesn't stop because you told it to. It stops because you stopped needing it to stop. It stops because you stopped seeing it as an enemy. It stops because you finally understood that it's just a tool. A brilliant, useful tool, but one that doesn't need to be on 24 hours a day. And when you understand this, when you really understand this, the early morning changes completely. It stops being a battle. It becomes a meeting between you and everything you've been avoiding. A meeting between you and the part of you that doesn't need answers, that doesn't need solutions, that just needs to be heard. If you're feeling this now, if something here is echoing inside you, I invite you to do something simple. Subscribe to the channel. Not because I need numbers, but because these videos are made for those who wake up at 3 in the morning and need to know they're not alone. And every time you see a notification from here, it's like a reminder. There are other people awake. There are other people listening. There are other people in the same river as you. And maybe that's all we need sometimes. To know we're not the only ones. Loneliness. This word carries so much weight, doesn't it? Loneliness is treated as something to be avoided, something to be cured, something that proves there's something wrong with you or with your life. And yes, there's a loneliness that hurts, a loneliness that's born from disconnection, a loneliness that screams for company. But there's another kind of loneliness, a loneliness that doesn't scream, a loneliness that whispers, a loneliness that doesn't come from the absence of others, but from the presence of yourself. And this loneliness, this rare and precious loneliness, is sacred, because in this loneliness, you're not running away, you're returning to the only place you should never have left, yourself. The early morning offers you this kind of loneliness, a loneliness that's not empty, but full of silence, full of presence, full of this strange feeling that even with no one around, you're completely complete. And this scares you, because all your life you were taught that you need others to be whole, that you need validation, approval, external love to feel real. And then, when you find yourself alone in the darkness and suddenly feel whole, the mind doesn't know what to do with that. The mind says, this can't be right. You should feel lonely. You should feel incomplete. You should miss someone. But you don't. At least not in that moment. In that moment, you're okay. Strangely okay. And this is what scares you more than the loneliness itself. Because if you can feel whole alone, what does that say about everything you spent your life building? About all the relationships you forced? About all the superficial connections you maintained just to not be alone? Sacred solitude isn't about rejecting others. It's about stopping using others as an escape from yourself. It's about understanding that true companionship, true connection, can only happen when you're not desperate for it, when you're not using the other person to fill a void that only you can fill. And how do you fill that void? You don't fill it. You realize it was never empty. You realize that what you called emptiness all your life was actually space, pure space, conscious space, space within which everything can exist without suffocation. And when you stop being afraid of that space, when you stop running from it, something changes. The people around you feel it, because you stop clinging, you stop demanding, you stop needing them to complete you. And ironically, that's when the deepest connections happen, because now you're not relating from lack, you're relating from fullness. So, when you wake up at 3 in the morning and catch yourself feeling lonely, stop, breathe, and ask yourself, am I feeling lonely because I'm alone? Or am I feeling lonely because I was taught I should feel this way? Because loneliness is only painful when you believe you're separated, when you believe you're an isolated individual, floating alone in an indifferent universe. But what if you're not? What if you're part of something so vast, so interconnected, that the idea of separation is just a temporary illusion? What if the loneliness you feel at 3 in the morning isn't the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of finally remembering that you never were? The early morning doesn't wake you up to make you suffer. It wakes you up to remind you that underneath all the roles you play, all the masks you wear, all the stories you tell about who you are, there's something unchangeable, something that doesn't need anyone to validate it, something that doesn't need anything to be complete. And that something is you, the real you, the you that was never born and will never die, the you that is pure consciousness, pure presence, pure silence observing all this unfold. And when you touch that, even if it's for a second, in the darkness of the early morning, you understand. You understand why you woke up. You understand why silence called you, because it wasn't isolating you. It was freeing you. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about fear, because deep down, that's what keeps you awake, isn't it? It's not the thoughts. It's not insomnia. It's fear. The fear of emptiness. The fear that if you really stop, if you really get quiet, you're going to discover there's nothing there, that you are nothing. This is the primordial fear, the fear of not existing, the fear that without all the distractions, without all the achievements, without all the relationships, you're going to look inside and find emptiness, a cold, dark, scary emptiness, an emptiness that proves you were never real, that you never mattered, that you're just a cosmic accident, a temporary bubble of consciousness that's going to pop and disappear without a trace. What if I told you that this fear is the ego's last defense, the mind's last attempt to keep you trapped in the illusion of separation? Because the emptiness you fear isn't real, not the way you imagine it. What you call emptiness is just the absence of everything you used to define yourself, the absence of titles, achievements, identities. And yes, when all that is removed, there's a moment of panic, a moment when you look around and don't recognize yourself anymore. But then, if you don't run, if you stay there just one more second, something happens. The emptiness starts to reveal itself, not as emptiness, but as vastness, as infinite space, as pure potential, as the field within which everything can arise, but which isn't defined by anything. And in that moment, you realize you're not the content, you're the container. You're not the waves, you're the ocean. The fear of emptiness is, actually, the fear of being infinite. Because if you're infinite, then all the little stories you told about who you are crumble. If you're infinite, then you can't be controlled, can't be defined, can't be put in a box. And this terrifies the ego, because the ego survives through definitions, through boundaries, through I am this, but not that. But the truth? The truth is you're not this or that. You're the space within which this and that can exist. You're the consciousness that witnesses both without being either one. And when you finally allow this to be true, when you finally stop resisting the vastness that you are, the fear disappears. Not because you conquered it, but because you realized there was nothing to conquer. The fear was just a shadow, and shadows disappear when you turn on the light. So, next time fear comes, at 3 a.m, when you're awake and vulnerable and questioning everything, don't run. Look at it. Ask it, what are you really afraid of? And wait. Wait in silence. Because fear has no words. Fear only has sensations. And when you allow those sensations to exist, without judgment, without resistance, without story, they start to dissolve, like mist under the sun. And what remains? What was always there? Silence, presence, peace. Not the peace that comes from having all the answers, but the peace that comes from realizing you never needed them. Because you're not the problem that needs to be solved. You're not the puzzle that needs to be put together. You're not the unfinished project that needs one more version, one more update, one more adjustment. You already are. Completely, totally, infinitely. And the emptiness you feared, it was just the invitation to this truth. The invitation to let go of everything you're not, so you can finally rest in what you've always been. At 3 a.m, when everything is silence and darkness, you're not facing emptiness. You're being invited home, to the only place where you never needed armor, to the only place where you never needed to prove anything, to the only place where you're loved not for what you do, but for what you are. And what are you? You're the silence that listens. You're the consciousness that witnesses. You're the vastness within which everything happens. You're everything. And at the same time, you're nothing. And both are true. And both are beautiful. There's an ancient concept, something that mystics always knew, but that modern science is only beginning to understand. It's the idea that there are levels of consciousness, layers, and that most of us live our whole lives on the surface, never realizing the depth that exists below. During the day, you're on the surface. You're in survival mode, in doing mode, in being productive mode, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's the game of life. That's the role you came here to play. But it's not all you are. It's just the shallowest, most limited, most conditioned version of you. But at 3 a.m, at 3 a.m, something changes. The layers begin to dissolve. The veil between the conscious and the unconscious gets thinner, and you, without realizing it, begin to descend into the depths of who you really are. And this scares you, because the depths aren't familiar. They don't speak the language of logic. They don't follow the rules of the waking world. They're strange, symbolic, paradoxical. They're the realm of dreams, archetypes, the eternal. But they're real. More real, perhaps, than anything you experienced during the day. Because these depths are where you keep everything that doesn't fit on the surface. All the fears you swallowed, all the truths you ignored, all the parts of you that you rejected because they weren't socially acceptable. And when you wake up at 3 a.m, it's as if these parts finally have permission to rise, to be seen, to be heard, and the rational mind panics. Because it doesn't know what to do with this. It doesn't know how to categorize. It doesn't know how to control. But you don't need to control. You just need to witness. You just need to be present. Because these parts of you aren't trying to destroy you. They're trying to integrate you. They're trying to make you whole. Carl Jung called this shadow work. The shadow isn't evil. The shadow is just everything you rejected about yourself. And the only way to become whole is to bring the shadow into the light. Not to destroy it, but to acknowledge it, to embrace it, to say, yes, you're also part of me. And where does this happen? Where do you have enough space, enough silence, enough darkness to do this work? At 3 a.m, when there are no masks to wear, when there are no performances to maintain, when it's just you, in the vastness of the night, face to face with everything you are. This isn't insomnia. This is initiation. Ancient cultures understood this. They had rites of passage, moments when you were forced to confront the darkness within you, moments when you had to symbolically die to be reborn more whole. And these rituals always happened at night, always happened in silence, always happened in solitude, because that's where real transformation happens, not in the noise, not in the crowd, not in the blinding light of day, but in the darkness, in the silence, in the solitary meeting with everything you are and everything you're not. And when you finally stop resisting this, when you finally allow the early morning to do its work, you begin to change. Not dramatically, not in a way others immediately notice, but deeply, permanently. You begin to realize you don't need the old stories anymore. You begin to realize the masks you wore for so long don't fit anymore. You begin to realize there's a different way to live, a way that doesn't depend on external validation, a way that doesn't depend on always being busy, a way that doesn't depend on running from yourself. And this way of living, it's born in silence. It's born in darkness. It's born at 3 in the morning when you finally stop fighting and allow something bigger than you to guide you. This is awakening. Not the awakening of self-help books, not the awakening of social media, but silent awakening, the awakening that no one sees, the awakening that happens in absolute intimacy between you and existence. It's the awakening that makes you realize you were never sleeping. You were just dreaming you were separate. And now, in the early morning, in the silence, in sacred solitude, you're remembering who you always were, remembering that you were never born and will never die, remembering that your eternal consciousness, witnessing this temporary dance called life. So, yes, you woke up at 3 in the morning, and maybe you'll wake up again tomorrow, and the day after, and this might seem like a curse. But maybe it's the greatest blessing you've ever received, because it means something in you is ready to go deeper, ready to see more clearly, ready to become more whole, and the universe, in its infinite wisdom, chose the early morning as the time for this work, because that's when you're most vulnerable, most open, most honest. That's when defenses are down and truth can finally enter. If you made it here, to this moment in the video, it's because something in you recognized this truth. And I wanted to ask you something. Share this, not because I need views, but because there's someone in your life, someone you know, who also wakes up at 3 in the morning, who also feels this, who's also doing this work in silence, thinking they're alone. And maybe, just maybe, this video is exactly what they need to hear. Not to solve anything, but to remember they're not alone on this journey. The early morning isn't your enemy. It's your ally. It's the teacher you never asked for, but always needed. And silence? Silence is the embrace you always wanted, but never knew how to receive. Until now. Until 3 in the morning. Until everything gets quiet enough for you to finally hear. If you're listening to this now, whatever time it is for you, I want you to know something. Something that maybe no one has told you before, but that needs to be said. You're not broken. I know it seems like it. I know that insomnia, nighttime anxiety, thoughts that won't stop, the loneliness of the early morning. I know all of this seems like evidence that there's something wrong with you, that you're flawed, that you should be different. But what if it's not like that? What if all of this is just the process of awakening, the process of integration, the process of becoming who you really are, removing everything you're not. Life doesn't wake you up at 3 in the morning to punish you. It wakes you up because you're ready. Ready to hear things that the noise of the day doesn't allow. Ready to feel things that the surface of life can't hold. Ready to meet yourself in a way that's only possible in darkness, in silence, in absolute solitude. And yes, it's scary. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, there are nights when you just want to sleep and wake up normal. But the truth is, you were never normal. You were always different. You were always deeper. You were always someone who felt too much, thought too much, questioned too much, and the world had taught you that was a problem. But it's not. It's a gift. A gift that comes with a price, yes, the price of not fitting in. The price of feeling alone in crowds. The price of waking up at 3 in the morning while the world sleeps. But it's also the gift of seeing further, of feeling deeper, of living more intensely, of touching, even if just for brief moments, the truth that's beyond words, beyond concepts, beyond everything that can be taught. So, next time you wake up at 3 in the morning, remember this: you're not alone. There are thousands of us scattered around the world, awake at exactly this moment, feeling exactly this, doing exactly this work. And the silence you hear, it's not empty. It's full of all the souls who, like you, are learning to listen beyond words, who are learning to trust beyond logic, who are learning to live beyond fear. This channel exists for this, to be a lantern in the early morning, not to illuminate all the answers, but to remind you that you don't need them, that you already have everything inside you, that silence already knows the way, and that all you need to do is trust. Trust the process. Trust the darkness. Trust that even when it seems like you're lost, you're exactly where you need to be. If this resonates with you, I invite you to stay. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Not because these videos have all the answers, but because sometimes all we need is a voice in the darkness saying, "I know, I feel it too, and you're not alone." And if you know someone who wakes up at 3 in the morning, someone who's going through this, share this video with them. Because maybe it's exactly what they need to hear, not to solve, but to remember that there are others walking the same silent path. The early morning will keep calling you. Silence will keep inviting you, and you can resist, or you can allow. You can fight, or you can surrender. You can be afraid, or you can trust. The choice was always yours. But know that whatever the choice, silence will be here, waiting, listening, holding you in a way no word could ever describe. So breathe. You're okay. You always have been. And the fact that you made it here, to the end of this video, to the end of this silent conversation in the early morning, already says everything. You're awake. Not just physically, but truly. And that is rare. That is precious. That is sacred. So don't fight it. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Because the early morning, with all its silence and all its darkness, isn't showing you the end. It's showing you the beginning. See you at 3 in the morning.